Pool School, brought to you by the Tote, with Luke Parkinson, Jamie Hart and Jamie Benson.
Hello and welcome to Pool School, the new podcast brought to you by Tote. It's not only pool betting that we like to talk about on this, we also like to let you hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So we've got Tote Ambassador, the informed Tote Ambassador, Danny Mullins, joining us. It's a delight to have you with us, Danny, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's great to be on, and hopefully we can get through some cool content.
Absolutely, yeah. Hopefully plenty more to come from Pool School across the year, but we'll get kicked off. We're going to look back on the festive rides and what was a brilliant festive period for you and start to the new year. And there's only one place to start, really, and that's with Tornado Flyer. We'll watch through the race in a little while, and the viewers can get your take on it. But how does that come about when you get the nod from Willie to come over to Britain and ride in one of these big races on what wasn't his leading contender, but certainly was always in there with a chance, even if the prices didn't suggest so?
Yeah, I suppose as regards Willie giving me the notice about the ride is probably the earliest he's ever told me I'd be riding a horse. I knew about 6 days before, and you know, he's a horse that I've ridden plenty in the past, and well, as you say, he was an outsider with his price in that respect, but I'd ridden him in a few decent races before. Wasn't beaten that far in a novice chase in Cheltenham at the festival, and was third in a Ryanair at the festival as well. Also was second in a John Durkin chase in Punchestown, just touched off by Min. So I knew going into the race I had a decent chance. What happened, you know, that was the stuff of dreams come true, but you know, going there, I was optimistic of a decent run.
Obviously, one with the Tote win dividend of £29, so it was a bit of a shock. But just as an Irish jockey, when you're coming over here now with the domination in the UK that the Irish have had in the last few years, are you coming over here almost thinking you've got a better chance anyway, or is it all just having a look at the form and the races on paper first, rather than having that bit of sort of arrogance, I suppose, that you've earned over the last few years?
Yeah, I think it's. Everybody is talking now about how strong the Irish horses are, and I think that's probably the most dangerous time for the Irish to relax and think they're so far ahead. I suppose I'd go into all these races as I would any race, just size up my own horse, what he likes, what way the race is going to be run, see what the opposition are like, what they're likely to do, and make the best plan of giving my horse the best chance of winning on the day. You know, if you relax at any time, no matter how good your horse is, you're going to leave the door open to start getting beat in some of these races.
Absolutely. And just to go back to Boxing Day, how did you get over here? Obviously, with it being Christmas time and stuff, it's one that many people spend with their families, but not jockeys, I suppose. How was the plan of getting over here? How did all that work out?
Yeah, so I flew on the morning of Boxing Day. Stephen's Day would be in Ireland, but I flew into Gatwick and got an Uber from there up to the track. I wasn't too bad at the race. My first ride was at 1 o'clock that day, and the King George was, I think, maybe 3 o'clock. So times weren't too bad for rushing for early flights or that. I think it was 8 o'clock out of Dublin. And you know, I spoke to Ruby about which flights he used to get, and he said just keep an eye on weather and fog and stuff like that, that you're not going to miss a flight. So, you know, a day like that, you don't want to be left sitting in Dublin and watching somebody else going around on the horse. But there was none of those complications, thankfully, and got the job done. Back to Heathrow that evening and back home for Ireland the next couple of days, and it was quickly followed by another trip to Cheltenham on New Year's Day. So I suppose I spent most of the holidays in an airport and traveling around, but to be riding horses like that, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Absolutely. I bet the Uber driver was pretty happy if you give him the nod that you had a chance of winning anyway. It would have given him a nice little tip on the journey back to the airport.
Definitely, you know, they some of the guys over there you'd meet on those kind of journeys are great characters, and they make it all the more enjoyable.
Absolutely. Should we have a look back at the race and down at the start? It's a strong field that was there. So obviously you just drop yourself in a little bit and see how the pace goes early. I imagine with Frodon and Minella Indo trying to take each other on a bit.
Yeah, I suppose the pace was always going to be very strong. And the fact that Tornado can usually get a bit high over the first couple of fences. Now, on the day in Kempton, he got a bit low at the first, and then his normal characteristic of jumping a little bit high the second, the ditch. And with that said, I knew I was probably going to lose a little bit of ground in the air over some of those early fences. So I just asked Willie, could I jump off a little bit closer to just allow him find his feet, jump and get a bit of confidence and not end up in a position where I was too far out of the race. And once, he went down, he got from A to B over the first and the second, and the race just settled down really after that. And, turning down the back, it was pretty much as planned. You make plans in a lot of these races and sometimes they're gone out the window after a furlong or two if people change what they're thinking. But as we expected, Manila Indo and Frodon were going a good gallop. Asterion Forlange, who can jump a little bit right, was handy down the rail. Chantry House in the middle, and I'm amongst the few following those, but I was quite happy with where we were.
And from a jockey's point of view, is Kempton, is it really a quick track like it's always made out that it is, that it's more of a speed test than a stamina test? Do you think that's right from riding it in the King George?
That depends on the ground. Usually it would be far more of a speed test when the ground is a little bit quicker. On Christmas Day, we had a good bit of rain, which softened things up a bit. And I suppose, with a flat track on good ground, horses can jump out, go a good gallop, and once their jumping holds up, they can maintain that gallop a lot easier. Where when you're climbing hills, it just can find out horses, just a different change in tempo. But on these flat tracks, they can be all speed. But on the day in Kempton with the rain, I knew it was going to be a stiffer test than it normally would be around there. Frodon was very good from the front last year, but he was always going to have more of a test on the ground and have more hassle for the lead. He wasn't going to get to dictate like he did the previous year.
Absolutely. So obviously, as we pick the race back up, just going back past the stands, jumping what is the last in the circuit's time, how are you sort of assessing the race for me? Are you happy with your position? Obviously just a couple behind you, but some of the main protagonists in front, you might be thinking, have they gone a bit too quick? They're still going at each other, really.
Yeah, it's as we go by the winning post, it's funny, the race usually always starts to bunch up a little bit there, and Frodon has just eased things off. Rachel Blackmore was wise to that move and just moved up beside him. Once you swing that bend and face up to the two fences away from the stands, the race really starts to develop again. I was following Chantry House at that stage. I thought he had a big chance in the race, and to see Nico starting to ride him along was just a little bit of an alarm bell that I was just going to have to be ready just to move by him at some stage. And just as we crossed the all-weather, heading back to the first fence, Nico's in the middle of the track. I'm just following him, move a little to his outside. He misses that bad. I wasn't that quick through the air, but I got to jump up beside him and be in a position to take his slot. And at the ditch away from the stands, I did jump at a good bit better, landed 3/4 of a length up on him and just took his slot behind the leaders. And, we'd bunched up a good bit at this stage. So I was happy that I was a few lengths closer to the pace without having to use much of my own petrol. Jumping put me in that position away from the stands. And as we swing back into the back straight, Manila Indo has dropped away. Frodon is starting to wind it up in front again. Clanda's Oboe is probably in the perfect slot to have a crack and where he wants to be. I was just keeping a little bit of light down the back straight, keep jumping away. And, each fence I jumped down the back, I was just able to land, fill him up again, take a hold of him. And I was just watching what was happening in front of me, seeing as they were starting to wind the race up. The few jumps I got down there were fantastic. After I jumped the second down the back, San Calvados moves up on my outside. I've just kept clear daylight for my lad, to get another good jump at the ditch, which he delivered. San Calvados has moved by me, just had a peek in the inside to see Lost in Translation had dropped back, and I was quite happy to tuck into that slot there on Clandazobo's tail. And once we jumped the last down the back, San Calvados makes a move forward, and once he'd made that move, I was quite happy that he was drawing the sting maybe out of Clandazobo and Frodon. I was conscious that they weren't going to, I didn't want them to fill up too much and be able to quicken away from me. But once more pace was injected out of the back straight, it put me in a nice position just to keep sitting until I'm down over the third last, and then build up and have a go from there. Once I jumped the third last, Clandazobo has hit the front. Brian Cooper has gone for the run down the rail. He's staying on as well. San Calvados is just folding as we get over the second last and land there, and Tornado hits the front. Now at this stage, you're still a long way from home, but you know, you have to try keep momentum going, hope for another good jump at the last. And if you watch Tornado, the last 4 strides down to the last, he pricks his ears again. That's always a great sign from a jockey's point of view. You know, a tired horse can leave his ears flat back. Once they prick him, you kind of know there's a bit of life in there. They're watching what they're doing. He went down, attacked the last, jumped it well. And once he's landed over it, he's really starting to pick up again all the way to the line. Asterion Forlonge fell at the last. I was quite confident I had him covered, but all the same, one more horse out of the way we didn't have to take on. He was none the worse for the fall. Seth and Brian got up and walked away. They'll be there to battle another day. But, you know, Tornado, he put it all together. The way he hit the line, I think it might be a sign of more to come in the future. Who knows? 3-2 around the Gold Cup in Cheltenham, that last 2 furlongs, you're just going into the unknown there. But I think it gives him a live chance going forward in these big staying chases.
Absolutely. And what's the feeling as you cross that line? Obviously, a good one. Is it a bit of relief that you've got a big one in the bag and ticked it off in your career, or is it just unbelievable feeling that you have achieved something like winning the King George?
It's unbelievable. You know, I've been fortunate enough through my career to ride in most of these very big races, but you know, when you're winning a race like a King George, it's just pure joy as you're crossing the line. Like, yeah, looking back on it now, it's one of those winners where you keep thinking, did it happen? You know, growing up, I would have remembered watching Florida Pearl, Kicking King, going to win King George's, and to see my name on the Roll of Honor with the likes of those horses and some great jockeys and trainers in the past, it's fantastic. When, you know, you have big festivals throughout the year, but at Christmas, it's really all about the King George, and to have put that on my CV, I'm very proud of it, but still hungry for plenty more.
Exactly, yeah. Hopefully another one next year, hopefully, or this year, 2022. But where do you rank that now? Obviously, you've won at the Cheltenham Festival as well with a Grade 1 there. And does that compare, or is that better in the King George? Where would you put that in terms of the big races you have won already? Hopefully more to come.
Yeah, the Stayers Hurdle was a feature race in Cheltenham. That was a fantastic day as well. But I suppose, you know, on both days, I thoroughly enjoyed them. But maybe Cheltenham is a big week of racing, and, you know, everybody enjoys their own bit of it, where the King George is pretty much out on its own at Christmas. And the reaction for me, they're on a par with how much I've enjoyed both of them, but the reaction from the general public after the King George was something else. You know, the amount of people that I hadn't been in touch with for years that text me and rang me for days afterwards. I was replying to messages, and you know, that really hits home about what you have achieved on the day. You know, the joy for me is being there, crossing the line and feeling that. But when it hits a wider audience, it really wakes you up to see how big of a day it really is.
Yeah, and there's a lovely video that you shared on your social media channels of Gran watching it as well, which was brilliant to see. When there's so many names within the Mullins family, but you were the most important one that day by the looks of it.
Yeah, definitely. Granny, I think 92, and she'd baiting the table, watching the race. So there's still plenty of kick in her as well. George took a little fall off the couch. So it's good to see the home team really enjoying it. I'm lucky to be part of such a big family, but for all the success that's been within the Mullins family, everybody within the family knows the hard work that goes into achieving those kind of results on the day. It starts a long way before, you're King George. Those 5 minutes are probably being planned for the last 5-6 years, maybe 10 years with some of those horses.
Definitely. And just one thing I'm interested in is, on the way back after something like that, you've had such a big victory that the media spotlight's on you while you're at Kempton, and then you have to get in a car and go back to the airport, and then you're on a flight home for an hour or two. What goes on there? Obviously, it's a quiet time, and then when you land, I imagine it went a bit mad again.
Yeah, so my phone was hopping all the way through. My battery was starting to run low. Lucky enough, I had a charger in my bag. My boarding card was on my phone, so if the battery had run out, I might have been left in Heathrow. But it's you're going through the airport, grab something to eat, and you're chatting to all your closest friends and replying to everyone you can, and just really soaking it up. I suppose from a horse racing point of view, it's funny, you win the King George, but you're back in business the next day in in Leopardstown, and you have 3 or 4 busy days, one day off, then back on a plane over to Cheltenham, back from there riding Tremor the next day. It's non-stop, where I suppose most other sports, their big day is a Sunday. They have Formula One, soccer, any of that, tennis, that they have their big day. They sit back, relax, and enjoy it. Where for us, the grind doesn't stop. You have to keep going. So it's slightly different. It's maybe a couple of weeks later when you get a few quiet days where you sit down, relax, and just get to reminisce about how good those days were.
Exactly, and that replay is there forevermore. You can watch that as many times as you want. How many times have you watched it so far?
Plenty. I think if you could ask me nearly to the second where we are and what we're doing, I'd be able to tell you exactly.
Brilliant. And obviously at Kempton, before the King George, you had another winner as well, one for Milton Harris, Jackamar. How does that sort of come about? Because I think that was your first ride for Milton.
Yeah, it came about through my agent, Ken Whelan, made a few phone calls, and thankfully he got me on a nice horse. It's difficult coming from Ireland over to ride in England and trying to get some nice rides there on the undercards and stuff like that. But hopefully the likes of that success will open up a few more doors for me if I'm traveling a good bit more in the future.
Absolutely. And when you come over to Cheltenham and stuff like that, is there anybody you are linked up with? And obviously Willie in Ireland, but is there anybody that you stay with, or family and friends that are over here that you normally knock around with?
Giles and Jay Barton, I stay with them for the festival in Cheltenham, and yeah, when I come to Cheltenham, they always put me up and look after me. Their daughter Leah as well. I'm nearly a family friend at this stage. I've been staying with them for a good few years, so it's nice to have people on the other side of the water that look after you just like your home as well.
Excellent. Good stuff when you're a jockey coming over. But just knocking on a few days over the Christmas period now, just to Leopardstown, obviously Flooring Porter, we've already mentioned winning the Stayers. That was an odd race from the start with Classical Dream getting a few lengths head start, and obviously it's been widely shared on social media. You sort of look across at the starter, it looks as if to say, how come you've let him go so early, kind of thing.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. I had my own view on it, but it's in the past now. I think through the middle part of the race, I was quite happy with the pace we were going. Anytime Paul eased off in front, I got up sides him just to keep him honest and expose any fitness doubts that he might have had, although one of Willie's, they're never really too much lacking in that area. But maybe the track position for me late on was what cost me a chance of having a crack at winning. I couldn't say for sure that I would have won, but if I had the rail on Florian Porter, I think he would have attacked down the straight a good bit more. All the way down to the last, he was just leaning up on the rail a little bit, and even from the back of the last, I couldn't get him off it to run into a bit of daylight and have a proper crack at Classical Dream. But the fact that he went around Cheltenham so well last year with Island hurdles, he was so well behaved there. I think if he gets out into a good rhythm, he has a great chance of reversing the form with Classical Dream. I think the race he won in Cheltenham last year was probably a good bit below where Classical Dream is, but the fact that, you know, with a few things coming against us in Leopardstown, I've always had confidence in Florian Porter that he would be good enough to beat Classical Dream. But I think from what we've seen in Leopardstown, he has a decent chance of doing it. That said, it's going to be a proper duel between the two of them as well. It'll be interesting to see where Champ lines up. Does he go for the Gold Cup, or does he stick to the hurdling and go for the Stayers hurdle? That could be another interesting one in the race. But I'm very happy with Florian Porter and optimistic of giving it a good show when they meet again.
Definitely. And in the last week or two, have you been just keeping an eye on Classical Dream to see what he's doing when you are at Willys, just thinking, well, hopefully he's not doing as well as you might be hoping, so that Florian Porter has got an edge anyway?
It's funny, Eilish Byrne always rides him out and she gets on very well with him, and every time I see her coming to the gallop, I just smile at her and tell her that I'm going to get you the next day.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have good banter. He was there. He looks in great shape since he came out of Leopardstown. And, you know, that's, I suppose it's true sport, you know, even if I'm riding work with Classical Dream or that, you know, that's my day job. But when it comes to Cheltenham, I'll be doing everything I can to beat him.
Absolutely. And a few other winners came over the Christmas period as well, and move on to Punchestown on New Year's Eve. Obviously, it was a Tote sponsored race day as well, and you got the day after the perfect start with En Beton, who looks like a really nice type and performed really nicely on the day.
Yeah, definitely. He's such a big horse. You know, anybody who was there that day watched him walking around the parade ring, and he's just a giant. And to see how fast he was at getting from A to B over his jumps, you know, he was very good for a horse having his first start in public. He just attacked those first few fences, and, you know, everywhere he was going, he was able to jump, save a little bit, and just had them all galloped into the ground. He gave a blow late on, but for a horse having his first run of the year over 2.7, almost 3 miles on that kind of ground around Punchestown, you'd have to forgive him giving a blow late. But it was a big performance. Stamina, I think, wouldn't be any question for him. But the way he jumps with such speed, he could be an RSA horse. The other option would be the National Hunt Chase. So I'm not sure where Willie will go, but maybe some people have him down as an out and out stayer. But for me, the way he does jump so quickly, I think he wouldn't be out of his ground in an RSA. And he's owned by Cheveley Park, who also have On the Ropes, for which would be he's a novice chaser, and he'd be qualified for the National Hunt Chase as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they split both of those horses up going to the festival.
They've certainly got plenty of stars, haven't they, Cheveley Park? They seem to be littered all over the UK and Ireland, and they always seem to improve for Cheltenham anyway.
Yeah, definitely. You know, they've been very good with the horses they've bought, and got a great reward with the success for the investment they've made.
Absolutely. And Punchestown was obviously New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. You're in Cheltenham, so how did you celebrate New Year? Was there any celebrations, or is it just business as usual?
No, it was fairly quiet, and just preparing for the next day, and it worked out fine. To be there to ride a mare like Stormy, she's a real little character. You'd walk by her stable and she'd take the head off you, she'd show her teeth and just come at you as quick as anything. But when you're on her back in a race, she's got the biggest heart for a small little mare, and she put up a proper performance in Cheltenham.
Obviously, brewing up a storm, come down at the last, you were sort of neck and neck, but I know you've said that you thought you were getting the better of him anyway, even if he'd have stayed up.
Yeah, off the bend, Aidan moved up beside me and looked to be going very well, and I was just starting to wind things up a little bit more. He's came off the bridle before me. We're both going at it hammer and tongs down to the last, maybe a half a furlong before the last. I thought he was going to beat me, but maybe 50 yards from the last, as Stormy started to lengthen and attack the last hurdle, I just didn't get the feeling Brewing Up a Storm was coming with me and how he was approaching the hurdle. I just thought, maybe I'm starting to get on top a little bit here. And I think maybe that was confirmed with the tired fall he took. He jumped well all the way and just looked like a tired fall, but who knows, he might come out and beat us again in the future. We'll be ready to pick up that battle when it does come again. But Stormy, in fairness to her, galloped on up the hill to be a good winner of the Red Keel.
And I imagine she'll head back for the festival now in March time.
Yeah, I think it's been said Willie is planning on going straight to the festival. There's an option of a mare's race in Warwick, maybe mid-February, and I suppose they'll just see how she is between now and then. But she's proved that she's well able to handle Cheltenham on New Year's Day. Some of her runs before weren't maybe at her best, but what she proved on New Year's Day, she can go there with a big chance, and she's a live contender for the mare's hurdle.
Absolutely. And just after the New Year's Day, obviously there was a little bit of a break in the calendar for Irish racing. What sort of happens then? Is there a chance to recoup, or is it's schooling days and really it's work, but just not in front of the TV cameras on a race course?
That's it. There's plenty of action at home. Some of the lads took a few days off and took a short little break, and I was just busy enough with a couple of other bits at home and some of the other horses that are starting off. There's some young horses we wanted to get a bit of schooling into and get them going and have them ready for later in the spring. So it's all action, but when I'm associated with such talent in the equine form, you're willing to do what you have to maintain the level of success that was achieved over the Christmas.
And when you're working for a lot of your family members, do you get an easy ride, or is it sometimes the opposite where they're a bit more tougher on you because you are family kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I suppose, it's when you're working with family, business has to come first. You have to turn up, do your job, and you're treated just like everyone else, really. You do your work, you get your reward, and if you're slacking, you get a little bit less reward. So once you're putting it all in, the reward will come.
Do you feel like you've got more rewards from your good festive period, or is it still very much that obviously Paul ran the first ones in Willys, but do you think you've been given a few more chances because of that, or is it sort of already set out how things are going to pan out over the course of a season?
Yeah, when you're performing at the highest level, it always opens up more doors and more owners want to use you. And I'm lucky enough. There's a good team of jockeys in Willys, and Willie shares out the rides to which riders suit each horse. And but for me, it's just important to perform on the big days and maintain that level of success. And you never know what opportunities are going to come in the coming months.
Absolutely. And just before we sort of wrap things up on the festive period, obviously 6th of Jan, just into the early part of the new year, Clonmel, and you had a double up there with Cashback, probably the pick of the two, with him beating Classic Getaway, who was well fancied anyway.
Yeah, it was a good performance. Cashback, he was a decent hurdler in his day. He'd had his jumping issues over fences. He'd taken a few falls, but had a solid comeback run in the hilly way. And he probably improved from that. And with the benefit of a run, he was always going to be a danger to Classic Getaway, who for me put in a solid performance for a horse having his first run over hurdles. To be only beaten 6 lengths by a 140 hurdler, that's as good as any maiden winner that we've seen over the Christmas. And a lot of people knocked him for it maybe because of his price tag. I think was he 570,000, but the horse doesn't know how much he cost. I wouldn't give up on him. He could be still a real contender for some of those good spring novice hurdles.
Exactly, and obviously we're at that point in the calendar now where the buzz starts to come fast and more often. We've got Dublin Racing Festival coming up, then into the Cheltenham Festival and Aintree and Punchestown. They're all coming thick and fast. So our preparations going for you with a view on them big meetings?
Yeah, everything seems to be going well. All the horses are in good shape, and I'm sure Willie will have a big team heading to the Dublin Festival. He runs a lot of horses there, and once they're getting into those Grade 1 races, there's a lot of different owners who want to have their crack. So Willie is not afraid to let them take each other on, and the prize money is also so good there. It's interesting this year. I think Paul Nichols is going to send over a team, which will definitely add to it. And you have to, I suppose, respect their ambition to come and take on the Irish. Frodon went to Down Royal and won the big race up there early in the season. So it's fantastic to have those English horses coming over and taking on the Irish before Cheltenham and making things a little bit more interesting. And hopefully they'll get some due reward for that.
Absolutely. You'll pay them respects, but I imagine you'll be hoping you can get one over them and continue the dominance.
Hopefully so, but it's great for competition all around to see plenty more coming to attack and have a go at us.
I know you've been on the Curragh this morning, schooling a few. Anything that's worth note that you've been riding the last few weeks at home that could be set for a big run?
I was on the Curragh earlier, and Billaway is coming along nicely. I'm not sure where he's going to start off. There's a couple of those hunter chases, I think, in the coming weeks. He was just touched off in Cheltenham and Punchestown in their feature hunter chases last year. So he looks in good shape, and hopefully he'll be back, I'm sure, for a tilt at the Fox Hunters again this year. Great
stuff. And are we likely to see you in England in the next few weeks, or anything to come across for any rides? Is there anything that Willie's already give you a few weeks notice on?
No, I don't think Willie won't be giving too much away, but who knows in the next few weeks what might need a run, or if there's no race to suit horses here, some of them might get over, and it'd be great to go over and have a crack at a few of the bigger races as well on some of the coming Saturdays.
Brilliant, Danny. Thanks very much for joining us. It's been brilliant to look back on the festive period with you. It was brilliant watching you even from home or at the racecourse, and following you as our Tote ambassador. So hopefully a few more success to come in the spring.
Fingers crossed. We'll keep working away at it.